Hey, good morning. Been a while since I did that last corn video, but there's a good reason for that. I have been working on, believe it or not, 3 guitar projects simultaneously, in various stages of completion. 1 is finished, 2 is very nearly finished. I'm just waiting for 1 more part and then I'll install that and then that project's finished. And the 3rd one I started and then kind of stopped halfway through, so I'll have to start that one up again. But yeah, I have actually got things I'm working on at the minute, which means that I haven't really got a lot of time to do the sort of like cheap budget pedalboard comparison videos that I've been doing recently. Specifically, one of those guitar projects is this one right here, which I don't want to give any spoilers on, but yep. In fact, you know what? You've seen too much of that. Let's not look at that one anymore. Now, according to parcel tracking, I've got about 10 days for that last piece of that guitar to turn up. So, while I've got that time, I thought, why not go through the rest of those comments and have a look? Because I've had a lot of people like, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? The one that I've been meaning to get to for ages was this comment from Scorpion MVV, who asked, can you try Mastodon Leviathan? Absolutely. Mastodon's Leviathan is one of my favourite albums of all time. It's one of their best albums, although that's very, very, very close. But rather than do the same process of this video that I've done quite a few times now, where I quickly talk about the album and then show you the pedal board and then quickly do a playthrough to see how, you know, close I could get it with my budget pedal setup, I'm going to do things slightly differently. So if all you're here for is just to hear how close I got it, you know, skip to this time code right here, right? Just skip to that and you can listen to me play very questionably through a couple of the songs on the album. If that's all you're here for, by all means, go there. But what I wanted to do with this specific video was mix things up a bit. I wanted to talk about not just Leviathan, because Leviathan, if you want to find out about Leviathan, there's a million reviews, there's a million sort of like behind the scenes things. What I wanted to do was talk about how I discovered Mastodon. So if you grew up in the UK and you were into heavy music in, let's say, from around about 1999 through to, let's say, 2004, all right, so that brief little time period, I am going to show you something. Now, if you fall into that category, I really hope that you've taken some antihistamines, because your nostalgia gland is going to swell up and burst when you see this. Now, in the UK at that time, there were multiple magazines. You could, I mean, I'm pretty sure Metal Hammer was around there, but the 2 big ones at that time were Krang and Rock Sound. Now, Kerrang started out as a rock magazine, but then towards the end of that brief period, like from 2004 onwards, it basically just turned into Just 17, like, you know, Just 17 magazine with guitars. Like, that's all it was towards the end of that. I was a massive subscriber to Rock Sound. And the reason is, it had a CD on the front every month, and the amount of bands that I discovered through that CD, it can't be measured. And then obviously when file sharing came along, I was like, oh, I want more, I want more, I want more, fine. But that CD was my gateway into finding all of these bands. And that was the magazine for me, specifically because it didn't deal in necessarily big bands that have made it. Yes, they would have people on the cover, like, you know, you would have Muse and Metallica and whatnot on the cover, and Tool, obviously. The thing that it focused on the most was about getting in at the ground level with a lot of bands who were essentially at that point just kids in a van, with the specific gamble that if these bands did make it and did become huge, then they would be like the ones where, oh, you know, when you get big, just come to us for interviews. And that was their big focus. And the exposure section would be a very small piece on just one photo and a very, very small write-up of who the band are, where they're from, what they sound like, and just keep an eye on them because they could be really big. A couple of the bands in some of the magazines, I've got about 10 years worth of rock sound. And I've been flicking through it, and some of the exposure sections are amazing. Like, there was like, keep an eye on this band, they could be really big going into 2001. Big little Scottish band, they're called Biffy Clyro. Like, yeah. And again, in like 2001, there was a little piece in the exposure section that said, yeah, you want to keep an eye on this like new metal folk band, they could be really big. It was System of a Down. And they did that like all the way through. You would look through this exposure section and it's like Killswitch Engage, they could be big. And then when you get into like 2004, it's like they had a little write-up of like bands that you need to keep an eye on because they're going to explode. And then right at the bottom was these tiny little pictures, and it was like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance. And that's what they did. Like, rock sound was brilliant for that. That's how I found all of these bands. Mastodon was one of those bands. Right, I've given you time to take your antihistamines. So if you are, you know, from the UK and you're into heavy music, hold on. So, in, when is it? In July 2001, okay, I found out about a little band called Clutch. And this was just, I think this is just when Pure Rock Fury was released. And I heard a couple of tracks off that. Again, I think they were featured on the CD that came with every single rock sound. I can't remember which episode, which issue, but I heard that. Massive fan. I also got into, at the same time, Raging Speedhorn, which were touring the UK. Really, really loved their stuff. It was like dirty and grimy, and it was like really sludgy riffs. I was like absolutely besotted with Raging Speedhorn. And I managed to catch Clutch when they did 1 or 2 dates with Raging Speedhorn. I forget where it was. I can't remember where the venue was, but the two of them did a couple of nights together, and it was amazing. I fell in love with Clutch at that point. Remember, pre-YouTube, pre-Spotify, pre-everything else, this was how you found out about bands. Where rock sound became unstuck was that they found a little band in Wales, and they got in on the ground floor. They released an EP, and they just got in there. They were interviewing them all the time. They were doing exposure bits on them all the time. Then the EP came out. It was really good. And then after that, this band's career just exploded, and they were on the cover. They were on the cover like twice, maybe 3 times a year. They really bet all of their chips on that one band. Rode that elevator all the way to the top. Then it turned out that one of the people in the elevator was the UK's most horrific paedophile. Again, the Rasmus. And then you look through here, so you've got like Slipknot, Ash, Mastodon. First time Mastodon has been featured in rock sound, and this is in June 2004. So this is a long time after Remission. Now, remembering that I am a massive Clutch fan at this point. Like, I love that band. Like, Shotgun Named Marcus, blew me away. Binge and Purge, like that sort of really, really, really loving Clutch at that point. And then this comes out, buy the magazine as usual, listen to the CD all the way through, pick out a couple of the bands. I'm like, ooh, I like that, I like that, I like that. And then, inside, you see this. Now, this, I was like, aha, I need to hear this. And the reason I needed to hear this was Neil Fallon in the studio with this band. I'm like, oh, cool. I like Clutch. I'll listen to this. And that was it. The CD that came after this issue, the CD that came with it, one of the tracks on the CD was Iron Tusk, was on that CD. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, oh, this is one of the greatest bands of all time. Like, no two ways about it. Rock Sound described their sound as Metallica meets Rush. That's what they reckon Mastodon sounded like. I didn't care. All I knew is that they were dirty and sludgy, and they sounded like all of the things that I really liked at that time. Let's turn it real low and let's just really chug our way through some stinking sludgy riffs. Perfect. But yeah, so I saw this. Wasn't too interested in this, but this is where I was at. So yeah, Mastodon. I heard Iron Tusk. They finished up Leviathan. Leviathan comes out, and I think it was the very first single off of it was Blood and Thunder, and that was it. Their career just, don't get me wrong, Remission is great. Like Crusher, Destroyer, Mother Puncher, they're amazing songs. Love those riffs. But Blood and Thunder, that was the one. That was the one that just resonated with everybody. The video, I remember the video being on, before it was Scuzz on Sky, because I had just got Sky TV at that point. Before it was Scuzz, it was called P-Rock. All right, this channel was called P-Rock, and Blood and Thunder was on that, like, on a loop, essentially, because you could just phone in. This is so weird to explain this. Like, I don't know how old my audience is, but kids, if you're watching, before YouTube, what you needed to do was dial in on a premium rate number and ask a TV station to play the video that you wanted to watch. And maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But yeah, so Blood and Thunder, I saw that and I was like, okay, fantastic. Listening to Leviathan now, it holds up. Like, it really, really holds up. And don't get me wrong, like, Blood Mountain, Crack the Sky, yeah, phenomenal. They've got at least 2 on any list of greatest metal albums of all time. Mastodon is on there 2, if not 3 times. But when you start breaking down that album, like, and going and like trying to dissect it and pull it apart, like I've been doing with these videos, like I did it with the Korn album, the Slipknot album, and obviously the Deftones albums. Trying to break that album apart and then trying to work the individual parts into a tone that I can get out of that pedal board. The one thing that stuck with me wasn't, or at least isn't, the album sound. The one thing that stuck with me more than anything else was when I saw them live. And I've seen them live a couple of times. First time, I can't remember where we saw them, but I'm pretty sure I saw them for Leviathan. Somewhere on the Leviathan tour. The best I have ever heard any band sound ever was when they opened for Tool in Wembley. Now, if you've been to Wembley, you know that the audio quality there is abysmal. Like, Wembley Arena is so bad. So they're already fighting with that. And then Tool, I mean, that was for the 10,000 Days tour. So it would have been, Mastodon would have put out Blood Mountain at that point. So imagine these two bands. So you've got Tool with their rhythmic. Yep, I know how this song goes. I'm hearing it all. And even if it's, you know, the sound quality isn't great, in your head, your brain is doing the rest of the work. Mastodon is so fast and so low and so sludgy that like a really bad acoustic environment can just turn that into white noise, sludge, whatever. It's just not music. I went in there to watch Tool. I came out as a living, breathing acolyte of the school of Mastodon live sounds. Like, it was insane. It sounded better than the album in an arena that is notorious for bad sound. I still don't know how they did it. And I've been to Wembley multiple times, and every single time the sound has sucked. Like, it's awful. It's always been awful. But they managed to make it sound amazing. So what I tried to do with this, can I get the album sound out of the cheap budget pedals? The answer's no. Like, you can get close, and with all of these things, I've not been getting like spot on, but I've been getting pretty close. With Mastodon, the one thing that you are going to need, at least to get spot on sound, is let's just say an orange amp, but preferably the orange Tiny Terror, which my father-in-law's got one, and I can 100% say that as soon as you plug into that, you can dial in that Mastodon sound real easy. Like, it is just there in a box. So yeah, there's that. But what I was going to do, I thought, well, I'm never going to get it spot on. I can get it close enough. But what if I focused on that night in Wembley Arena? What if I can get a sound out that doesn't lose those dynamics? Like, what if I can get a sound out where you can get the dissonant chords, you can get the high up power chords, you can get solos, you can get pinched harmonics, and then when you go back to the chug, 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 sludgy stuff, it doesn't sound like a mess. Like, the low stuff doesn't get all like grimy and horrible, and the high stuff doesn't sound all like scratchy and white noisy. What if I could set up the pedals with the EQ and get two songs that sound pretty close, but also sound like you're using way more and way more expensive gear than you're actually using? You know, save a bit of money and maybe get some dynamic results out of it. So Blood and Thunder, but also I wanted to do a far more dynamic song, like a song with super low lows, super high highs, pinched harmonics, dissonant chords, the lot. Fast bits, slow solo, super fast riffing, and without doing like the river dance on a pedal board. How can you just set a pedal, cheap pedal, budget pedal, £27 pedal, and a £20 EQ pedal, and then just set it once and go? So I picked right back to the beginning thing, Iron Tusk. Why not? It's arguably my favorite riff on the album. No, I had an argument with myself and it won. So yeah, that's my favorite riff on the album. And also it covers all the bases. So what I'm going to do is, instead of running you through the pedal board, because I've done that before, if you want to see what pedal board I'm using and what goes what and the signal chain and whatnot, check out any of these. Like, check out any of them. Check out the Korn one, the Deftones one, any of them. So I haven't changed any of the pedals. All the pedals are set up the same. The signal chain is the same. Everything's the same. All that's changed is the settings for the individual songs. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play through those two riffs, and I'm going to put the settings in the corner as I'm playing through the riffs. Yeah, it's just been fun going back and revisiting Leviathan, which, you know, I play the album a lot and I hear the album a lot, but very rarely nowadays do I actually listen to the album. And that's what I was doing this, you know, with this pedal board setup, is actually take the time to listen to the album and listen to how it's, you know, put together. Okay, now just like in all the other videos except the Korn video, I shall be using my favorite guitar. This is an Ibanez. I've had a couple of people ask what this is. I think it's an Ibanez SZ520 QM. Really rolls off the tongue. So yeah, that's what this is. It is a solid mahogany Ibanez. I mean, it's got a Strat shape, but essentially it's a Les Paul. Like, that's what it is. It's a combination of the two. Strat shape, Les Paul sound. I've changed nothing in it. Stock pickups. And I will be running through a knackered Marshall solid state amp, which is a G30R CD, but it's like 20 years old and it's busted. So all I'll be using is the clean channel with the bass and treble set to 12 o'clock. The amp's really doing nothing. It's the pedals doing all the work, essentially. As far as tuning goes, now, with Mastodon, it kind of varies depending on the song. But for these two songs I'm gonna play, they are in, one is in a fairly standard tuning and the other one is in a bit of a weird tuning. So for Blood and Thunder, you have to set your guitar up to D standard. So take every string, tune it down a whole step, you're there. So instead of E, A, D, G, B, E, you'll have D, G, C, F, A, D. So every string, exactly the same, down one step. So for Iron Tusk, it's a little bit different. So the bottom 5 strings will be exactly the same as Blood and Thunder. It's the top string that's a lot different. So again, your G, C, F, A, D, bottom 5 strings. But your top string, that's down to an A. So you're taking that top string and tuning it all the way down to an A. It can be a bit weird, and on some guitars it can be very twangy and very sort of like slushy. The way I can suggest to get around that without getting a baritone guitar or a slightly longer scale guitar is just muck around with string gauges. So on here I have a set of Burley Slinkies. I use exclusively Ernie Ball strings. And Ernie Ball do like a lot of very sort of weird string packs depending on sort of the kind of music you're playing. For this guitar, I put on Burley Slinkies. So that's got a slightly thicker top and a slightly thinner bottom. Providing that you can get it dialed in, really dynamic, really good for those chug, 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 chug riffs. And then when you go into the upper strings, it sort of like sounds a lot more bright. It's a really cool tuning. Like think Rusty Cage by Soundgarden, like that kind of thing. Yeah, that's what I'll be using. Right, let's get to the riffs. I am very tired. I'm very sleep deprived. So this is just rambling. But yeah, it was nice to go through these again. looking at this. This is like a super cool part of, you know, my youth. Look at this. Have you got a Nokia 3210? Would you like a little wallpaper for it? Would you like the little Limp Bizkit logo for your Nokia 3210 or Crazy Town?